Greetings, YouTube. LMS Tactical here. Listen, the broadcast you're about to hear is actually from the Michael Savage radio show. This aired about 2 or 3 days ago, and it was so good that I looked it up on YouTube, and then I recorded the segment that I want you to hear. I think every American needs to pay full attention to this. This is a guest that he had on. And if you listen all the way through, he'll tell you his credentials and where he's from and blah, 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 blah. He's got a lot of things to say, a lot of information that's going to affect all of us in terms of radical Islam. You really need to not only listen to this, but you need to share this with everybody you know. You need to listen to it, let your family listen to it, especially your liberal friends and relatives. Let your kids listen to it. Look, knowledge is power. And reality is awesome. And this is reality. Even though it's not good news, it's our world. So pay attention to it, listen to it, spread it around. I wouldn't be surprised if someday we're not even allowed to put this kind of shit out on YouTube. So get them while it's hot. LMS Tactical, enjoy.
Now let's go to a far more important story, which is our guest and what he's going to tell you. Waleed Shoebat, always a pleasure. Thanks for being with us.
You bet. Thank you, Mike.
Waleed, you know, we have a very serious situation in America, worse than it ever was. You know better than I what's coming. The lawyer for the shooter's family had the nerve to say that she didn't even do it. Did you hear that lawyer at all, Waleed?
No, I haven't heard the lawyer, but we've seen this before with the pressure cooker bomber, Tsarnaev. The mother, the family came out and said similar things. Yet the mother supported the jihadi, supported the martyrdom of her sons. So it's very logical that the Muslims, and the mother, I heard the mother lived with them too, in the case of the San Bernardino massacre. She must have seen him making bombs and pipe bombs. In fact...
Yeah, where is Grandma? Where is Grandma where they dropped off the infant? Where is she? But, you know, let's go to the biggest story. Loretta Lynch, our Attorney General, came out today with an astonishing statement, Waleed. Have you heard about this one?
Yes, I have. I posted on it. It's very obvious.
Okay, good. Well, hold it. For everyone listening, our Attorney General said this in front of a Muslim group just yesterday. Please listen to clip one.
Now, obviously, this is a country that's based on free speech, but when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-Muslim rhetoric, or, as we saw after 9/11, violence directed at individuals who may not even be Muslims, but may be perceived to be Muslims. And they will suffer just as well, just as much. When we see that, we will take action.
Are you shocked by this, Waleed?
Actually, no, I'm not shocked, because that's the way it has become under the Obama administration. They try to make it workplace violence the whole time, when it was obviously it had the signature of ISIS. In fact, they went to Corona Mosque in Corona, California. I investigated the mosque itself, and if you take a look at the mosque, it looks like something out of Saudi Arabia. They talk about how to become jihadis as well. In fact, the Facebook of that mosque is being scrubbed, and so you can't even access the speeches unless you're a member. So, but you can see it's how to become like Salah ad-Din in jihad. It's very obvious what they're teaching in that mosque, that the same portrayer of the massacre in San Bernardino had it on his Facebook page. Before that also was scrubbed. In other words, you know, they scrub everything out so they can make the Muslims look good and the families of the Muslims look good. They bring family member who was in the military. Look, Savage, my brother was in the Air Force. He guarded nuclear facilities. He's very much an Islamist. His wife's from Gaza. She's pro-Hamas. Her family, the whole family is working for Hamas operatives here in the U.S. And he's in the United States Air Force. So the idea that...
Wait, hold on. You lost me here. The brother of the massacre, the guy who committed the massacre, is still in the Air Force?
No, I'm talking about my brother. The brother is in the Navy of the massacre. The brother, Farouk's brother, was in the Navy. He's coming out and saying, oh, look, you know, I served in the Navy and I fought terrorism. Hello? This is from Pakistan. These guys are from Pakistan. If my brother was in the Air Force, he's very much an Islamist, marrying a Hamas activist and marrying into a family that all are very pro-Hamas, being activists in the U.S. What makes us think that his brother is not the same? So, you have in the ISI, the intelligence of the Pakistanis, you have fighting terrorism and all these things. But a lot of them are operatives, part of ISIS, part of Taliban, part of the whole spiel. In fact, these are Pakistani citizens. In Pakistan, you have tens of thousands of passports and identifications being given to people, birth certificates. It's so easy to get a birth certificate. In fact, I doubt that her name is Tashfeen Malik. I've never heard of the name Tashfeen Malik. Tashfeen Malik is a code name. It's an ISIS code name. It comes from the wars from Andalusia. From the Andalusia were the Muslims that invaded Andalusia in Spain. And so they use these code words. These terrorists, like Ahmed Rassam, who was behind an attempt in New York, he changed his passport to Ben Norris, a Western name. So these people can come in from anywhere in the world. The system does not work. It's impossible to be able to filter the good, the bad from the ugly with the system that we have. Absolutely, virtually.
Well, in France, very left-wing government, socialist Hollande, right after the Paris massacre, they immediately took action, including closing down 3 or 4 mosques. Now, the question is, you know better than any of us listening to this show, how many mosques in this country, what percentage of the mosques, now, in your guesstimate, are preaching violence?
Almost all of them, virtually, almost every one of them. I lived in California. My dad used to go to a mosque. My family went to a mosque. Every one of them, almost every one of them, teaches all these things. Every mosque I investigate. I've been doing this for how many years? Every mosque.
Hold on. Attorney General Lynch vows to prosecute anti-Muslim speech. So you've just committed anti-Muslim speech even though you're a Muslim.
In fact, I was prohibited. I spoke in New Jersey. The district attorney of New Jersey now is making it official that I'm not allowed to speak anywhere in the country, even though we have free speech to the police officers.
What? Wait a minute. When did this happen? Waleed?
Just a week before the Paris attack. Just a few weeks before the attack.
You cannot speak in New Jersey? Why? Why is that?
Because I'm considered a profiler. I call for profiling Muslims in this country. Now, you can argue and say profiling is not 100% foolproof, but it does filter 80-90% of terrorists. It does filter. It works. It works for the Israelis. They do it all the time. They don't have any hijacking of airliners. And so, because it does work, they don't allow me to speak. And they keep talking about that, this is against Islam and so on and so forth. So I'm not permitted to speak by the U.S. government to any police officers, emergency responders, so on and so forth. And I give them all the clues. I've given them everything that's on my website. In fact, I've given them how they were infiltrated. In fact, I give them operatives who infiltrated. And this is supposed to be a closed venue in which they made it public and they succumbed to the Council of American Islamic Relations. So in other words, CARE is what dictates who can teach Homeland Security in this country, in the FBI. CARE. This is the way it is in this country. And so, you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. I can't force them to listen to me.
Waleed Shoebat speaks Arabic fluently, obviously, because he's from the Palestinian. You're Palestinian Arab, correct?
Correct. I can read you Arabic.
Okay.
Speak Arabic right now if you want.
Right. And I love when you speak Arabic on the show because it's classic Arabic. It's beautiful to listen to. But today, the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, vows to prosecute anyone guilty of what she describes as violence-inspiring speech. Does this mean she's going to prosecute any Muslim who does the same?
Hardly. She's probably going to prosecute people like myself. And so, look, she needs to address how can they catch these terrorists. Let me tell you how difficult it is. These days, you can go on the chat rooms and everything is encrypted. In other words, you have 17,000 conversations going on. With these 17,000 conversations going on, you need an agent for every conversation. That agent has to know Arabic. It's not that they can vet these guys to come in the country. It's that this terrorist will vet the FBI agent when he comes in there acting as if he's Muslim. Now remember...
Oh, my God. So, in other words, how many active investigations did you just say there are?
Well, there's about 16,000 that goes on to recruit.
So what, we need 16,000 Arabic-speaking agents in order to follow them? We know we don't have that, do we?
Not only that, they must be very knowledgeable about Islam. They must speak the language. They must know the code language. They must know everything. So in other words, it's an impossibility to infiltrate the mechanism. And ISIS is demanding 10 million Americans to die. Remember what they say, the famous slogan they use, في عقر دياركم, in the abode of your home. This is why they attacked this place. They don't have to attack major building. They can attack any medical center, anything, a mall, a shopping center.
Why would, let me ask you, Waleed, why would these psychopaths attack a place that treats developmentally disabled people? Why would they do a thing like this, which only makes everyone on earth hate them even more?
Because it's brilliant, Savage. If you can make every American avoid the major places, Times Square. If I avoid Times Square, maybe I'll be okay. If I avoid, concerts, football games, maybe I'll be okay. But no. ISIS is, that's why I said, their motto is, in the abode of your home. In any place, they are trying to attack anything that will make anybody paranoid and anybody going out and seeing anything or doing anything for Christmas season. If this happens, they could basically crush the economy. This is what the plan is. And let's understand that this is a plan of 10 million people. This fatwa that was given by Nasruddin, what's his name, in the manifesto, he's talking about 10 million Americans. They talk about weapons of mass destruction. They talk about major issues. The ISIS manifesto, everybody should look at it. I've written it. I've documented it, 26 pages of the ISIS manifesto, and what they plan to do in the United States, Australia, France. I did this a year and a half ago, before the Paris attacks, before the attacks here, before the pressure cooker bomber, and nobody is listening. And so the idea is to...
Oh, no, they're listening, but they're taking the other side. Loretta Lynch said anyone who says a word is now an enemy of the state. She took the other side.
Well, this is the problem of the West here, because the problem is against the Judeo-Christian ethics. So they are on their side. This is why the Muslim Brotherhood very clearly says that we will use whatever mechanism that is on our side, and that's the liberal movement. ISIS, they'll do the same thing. It doesn't matter. Terrorists will use the Americans who are pro-Islam for their purpose, and this is what CARE is all about. Every single American organization that is Islamic, every Islamic organization in America, the major ones, harbored terrorists, assisted terrorists, financed terrorists, CARE also have many members who've been involved in terrorism. And so this is part of the apparatus. Jihad is not just blowing up people. Jihad is also a political mechanism. It's an ideology that wants to...
Waleed, the picture you're painting is not only depressing, but it means that we're liable to lose this war, and this government could fall into the hands of the jihadists themselves, or has it already done so to a certain extent?
We already lost the war. How are you going to protect the homeland if 10,000 Obama wants to bring from Syria? You have one. Let me just give you an example. Abu Omar al-Baljiki, who entered into the Paris attack. Abu Omar al-Baljiki was a well-known beheader in Syria. Now, this guy's photo should have been all over the place, but they can come in under a different passport, which is clean. In other words, they got nothing on their records. So the same thing happened with the San Bernardino attack. These guys have nothing on their records because most likely Tashfin Malik is not the real name of the person. And so it's impossible to basically filter this.
All right, Waleed Shoebat, and don't leave us, Shoebat.com, SHOEBAT.com. You should be advising the president. You should be advising the Department of Justice. You should be advising DHS and FBI, but instead, you are the villain. It's unbelievable. Everything is upside down. Back in a minute, right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth and financial future. Call 1-800-289-2642. Welcome back to the program. We have such little time and so much to talk about. And we have an expert, a real expert, not a talking head who's reading other people's stuff. Waleed Shoebat knows what's going on, and it's pretty depressing. We're talking about that, especially in light of the fact that our Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, has just yesterday vowed to prosecute anti-Muslim speech. Waleed, welcome back to the program. You were very despondent almost about defeating ISIS. Are you telling us that we're losing this?
Absolutely. In fact, they should be fighting all the websites. The guy and his wife made these bombs. How did they access this stuff? How did they know how to make this material? Listen, there are detailed instructions on step-by-step manuals in English or in Arabic for homegrown terrorists that can feast their eyes on assortment of websites, give detailed instructions, how to make TATP. In fact, in Paris...
Well, why don't they? Why doesn't the government close these down?
Even YouTube. In fact, I've been trying to communicate with...
Wait, Waleed, can you stay with us into the next hour? I want to know your opinion on why the U.S. government does not close these websites down.
Well,
and why the Attorney General is trying to chill free speech and intimidate those of us who know where the danger lies and whether or not we're going to survive this invasion of the Syrians. That's the real question. Will we survive this importation of this male army in the United States of Obama?
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of unprotected thoughts, borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
We have three balls in the air, and the most important is the ISIS threat to all of us and what the government is doing about it. Most of us fear the government is not doing enough about it, or in fact, they're taking the wrong approach. Some of us believe that there's a more sinister story, which is that the government is actually enabling ISIS to thrive in the world and in America. I know many of you don't believe that. Unfortunately, many of us do. Today we wake up and our Attorney General, a day after the massacre in San Bernardino, she goes before a group of Muslims to placate them, calm them down, and tell them anybody who says anything that's anti-Muslim, that edges towards violence, will be prosecuted. This is the most shocking statement I've ever heard of in my life. It is something that would go on in a university today, for sure, because they don't believe in free speech. Certainly universities are bastions of hate and bastions of cynicism and fascism today. We all know that. Could this be true that the Attorney General says a thing like that and doesn't correct the record? Let us hope she corrects the record. Let us hope that she respects the First Amendment. And let us hope that she uses the great power of her office to protect us rather than to persecute us. The second thing is this issue of the shooters themselves. I woke up today and I could not believe what I heard. I predicted it yesterday in a sort of cynical, joking way that tomorrow we'll wake up and one of the family members will hire a lawyer, a shyster lawyer, to sue the San Bernardino police for using too much violence to subdue the attackers. And guess what? Listen to clips 4 and 5. This is the most eerie thing you could ever believe. This is a lawyer for one of the shooters in San Bernardino on the Savage Nation.
There's a lot of disconnects, and there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of things that quite frankly don't add up. She was never involved in shooting. She's probably about 90 pounds, so it's unlikely she could even carry a weapon or wear some type of a vest or do any of this. Where the couple was found, from what I understand, is that they were handcuffed, lying face down in this truck, shot up. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense.
Okay. Now, there should be a limit to what lawyers can do in this country. Lawyers should be limited, and they should be supervised a lot better. They should be sued in a time like this, or the licenses pulled, I mean. Do you realize what this animal just said? Do you realize what this thing with a law degree just said? He just said that they're innocent victims who were trussed up, handcuffed, and executed by the police. This thing with a law degree has now just spit on the bodies of all the dead people, spit in the faces of all the survivors' families. Moreover, he has spit in the face of those brave men who went in there to face those vermin. This passes for a lawyer today in the United States of America. It's a courtroom that needs to be stopped. You talk about free speech. Shouldn't there be limits on what lawyers can say and do, especially at a time like this? Where does this lawyer come from? What is his background? What is David Chelsea's associations? How was he so quick to be found? Well, these are the questions that would be answered in a legitimate, sane society, in my opinion. I want to go now to Walid Shoebat, Shoebat, one of my favorite guests. I don't have him on often enough because he speaks Arabic. He's a former member of the PLO, and he knows more about the mind of the terrorist than anybody I have ever spoken with. Walid, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Did you happen to hear the attorney's commentary that I just played?
Yes, of course. It's the idea of creating enough problems for the police. In other words, the war is not a war on terror. It's a war on the police force. This is why they create racial divide. This is why they always attack the cops in these racial divides, so they can make a sector of the population fight another sector of the population, and you divide and you conquer. The idea is power. And if a government can have power, just look at Mexico next door. Once they begin to deal with the cartels, you have a situation in Mexico just as worse as in Syria. The killings in Mexico is unbelievable. Over 100,000 people massacred in Mexico. Nobody talks about it. Eric Holder sends weapons over to Mexico. And then so you create a problem against the guns. The gun is the problem. So you create more abortions. So somebody who is religious enough says enough with abortions and attacks the Planned Parenthood. They say, oh, look, there's terrorism by the Americans themselves. So you create Planned Parenthood, you create racial divide, you create all these things, you bring 10,000 immigrants from Syria, you create all this chaos so you can be in control. This is very simple, is the idea of the mindset of the liberal agenda that we have. This is why the liberal agenda is so much Islamist, because you find the liberal agenda with the same mentality as the Islamist. You have the environmentalists. The environmentalist is very close to Islam. They agree with Islam because Islam talks about environmentalism called al-himaz. Abortion, in the Muslim mindset is not the same as the Christian or the Jew, because in Islam there's a gestation period. In other words, you can have abortions. They are in agreement with these Islamists. It's not that they are disagreement. They're in agreement with any revolutionary mindset. They're in agreement with any communist mindset, Islamist mindset, you name it.
Wally, I agree with you, and I love listening to you. You've said so many things. One of them is about abortion. I thought abortion was illegal amongst fundamentalist Muslims.
That's not true. That's not true whatsoever. There's a gestation period in Islam in which the spirit does not connect with the fetus. So before that, you can abort. So this is why you look at people who become in the political sphere in America, and they're Muslim. Why is all political sphere in America? And they're Muslim. Why is all their agenda so liberal? Islam is not conservative. This is a myth. It's not true. They believe in the Big Bang. In fact, the Big Bang theory is taught by Islamists in the U.S. in the universities. So, it is, they believe in evolutionary process, sort of a creationary evolutionary process, in which evolution is part and parcel of the part of creation. Islam is a cult. It's not Judeo-Christian ethics whatsoever. Islam is environmentalism. Islam is share the wealth. When Obama says sharing the wealth, he gets that from Muhammad himself. When they moved from Mecca to Medina, and the people in Medina began to share the wealth with the Muslims of Mecca. This is what they call about sharing the wealth. This is why countries in Libya under Gaddafi was socialist. Egypt was socialist, because Islam is a very socialist religion. So to think that Islam is conservative and Islam believes in the same God and so on and so forth. Look, the massacre terrorists in San Bernardino. They just today came out, they gave allegiance to ISIS. What does giving allegiance to al-Baghdadi mean? Well, they lift up their one finger, to denounce the Trinity. And this is the main thing. They're Unitarian. So they denounce the Trinity. In other words, the war is on Christianity. That's what they need to understand. The war is on Christianity.
Okay, so it's ISIS versus Christianity, as the Russians are saying. The Russians are saying it like it is. The Russians are saying it's ISIS versus Christianity, which is, of course, why Obama hates Putin. But let's put that aside for the minute. Let's go back to the battle within this country. You said something that's very alarming in the last hour, Waleed. You said that if we bring in the Syrians, it's all over. We'll never, ever be able to protect ourselves. Is that true?
Look at Europe. 100,000 already entered that are pro-ISIS. 100,000. That's what the estimations are. And one person, like Abu Amr al-Baljiki, can commit a massacre, can mastermind a massacre in Paris, shuts down Paris completely. So you look at San Bernardino, it was a war zone. San Bernardino wasn't just a terror attack, it was a war zone. Things were closed down. It really cripples down the economy. And so you have 10,000 Syrians. Look, these Syrians from a very young age, they are very much inclined to beheading. They see beheadings in the street like you go fishing. So you want to bring 10,000 of these? Well, guess what? There's going to be many, many.
So, but Waleed, what you're saying is that unless we have a right-wing revolution in the next election, and unless we get an extreme right-winger who is willing to deport people by the millions, and to close down radical mosques, and to root out the terrorists where they are preaching hatred, we're going to lose this country. That's what you're saying. Am I right or wrong?
You're absolutely right. In fact, I talked to experts from the Middle East, even in Syria. I have an expert from Syria. Do you know who he wants to win the election? Donald Trump. Even the righteous Arabs want Donald Trump. They know that Donald Trump is the man that could stop this stuff. They know that he could make America in a way unique and back to its success again, and begin to close down the borders and begin to not allow student visas from countries like Syria, countries like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. Look, a Saudi Arabian passport. This is considered a friend of the U.S. So anybody with a Saudi passport can enter. The 9/11, you had two of the hijackers. They had Saudi passports, forged passports. So if you have a Saudi passport, you can enter with no problem whatsoever. A Saudi is viewed just as you view a Canadian. And so if the system allows an Islamist from Saudi Arabia, which is the bunker of the Wahhabist ideology, which created ISIS, which created Hamas, which created the Muslim Brotherhood, which created all the revolutions that you see after the Arab Spring, from Tunisia to Egypt to Syria to everywhere. The war is very clear, really. The American sphere thinks that Putin is the problem. Putin isn't the problem. Putin is the solution. Putin is confronting Turkey, and I've spoken in your program about Turkey. Turkey is at the head of this ISIS agenda. Turkey is the one, not Greece. Turkey is the one that sends these infiltrations into Europe. This is why Germany have to give $3 billion to Turkey. Merkel is in...
Well, I want to ask you something. Why is Merkel opening? Why is she opening the country up to so many Muslims? What's going on there? Why would she do this?
It's the same mentality as Obama. If you are a liberal, if you are a revolutionary mindset, you create havoc. If you create havoc and you set one sector of the society against another...
Wait, but Merkel comes from an Eastern European communist background. Does that explain why she's doing this?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay, there it is. There it is. She's Stasi-like. This woman who posed as a moderate conservative, we wake up and find out she has destroyed Germany by bringing in Muslims by the millions against the will of the German people, the same way Obama is doing to this country. And the European Union just yesterday said that Christianity is in danger in Europe. Europe is now not a home for Christians, according to the EU, that is bringing in the Muslims. Waleed, before you leave us, it's very important you tell the audience your background. It's very important they know who they're listening to, because they may think that you're just a caller. Would you please explain it in a nutshell?
I was a terrorist. I grew up as a terrorist in Israel. I came to this country as a U.S. citizen. That's how easy we can come in. And I was very active in the PLO. I was very active in the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, my mentor runs a mosque in Bridgeview, Illinois. His name is Jamal Saeed. And so I understand the intricacies of how to infiltrate, how to gain support, how to be active in mosques, how to, the whole shebang. I became Christian in 1993. In fact, that is what became my crime when I converted to Christianity and I began to fight and I began to work with the FBI. In fact, I'm hated by everybody now. I'm hated not just by the FBI. I'm hated by the Homeland Security. I'm hated by the government. I'm hated by many. You know, so now
I'm sure you're hated by Fox News. Have they ever had you on?
I'm banned from Fox News after.
Well, welcome to the club. You're in good company.
You know, you have the election coming. You know, look at the Republicans. Do you think these Republicans are any different? They're all
No.
on Putin.
No, absolutely not. I know personally they're not. The only one who's different is Donald Trump, who's been on the show many times. I consider him to be a super honest man who's willing to say it like it is. Waleed, before you go, give people some hope. Is there?
I've had it with my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. The frustration, covering up.
Waleed, before you go, give people some hope. Is there any?
Well, the high death toll is the only hope, unfortunately. The West will only learn through a high death toll. The higher death toll, the more they will learn, and it's not going to work any other way. The system is completely corrupt. So unfortunately, there's no good news. At the end of the tunnel, you have to have tens of thousands, maybe millions of Americans. Let's not forget, ISIS wants 10 million Americans dead. 10 million.
That's a nice thought for the weekend, Waleed. Thanks for making it a very pleasant Friday. Waleed Shoebat, Shoebat. If you want the truth about what they're doing, how the government is enabling them, go to shoebat.com. Waleed, thank you so much and take care of yourself. Back in a minute on the Savage Nation.
So there you have it. That information I think is extremely important. It's based on reality. It's something that is going to affect all of us, as I said in the beginning. Please share this video. Share the, share it with people you know. Everyone, put it out on Facebook, everywhere. You know, all of us have to do our part to help our fellow citizens wake the fuck up. LMS Tactical, stay safe. I'm out.